Welcome, it is Mitch. I am on YouTube. Please click the subscribe button if you haven't already. Appreciate all the support as we try to build this channel up. NFC North outlook for Week 4. What do we got? Vikings 3-0, Packers and Lions 2-1, Chicago sitting at 1-2, and right now in the cellar of the division. That can of course change. Plenty of ball left. For Packers and Vikings talk, if you missed it, we had our final thoughts video posted yesterday, so make sure to check that out. We'll touch base here on Minnesota and Green Bay, but the bulk of that conversation happened in yesterday's video that came out again, Packers, Vikings final thoughts, if you missed it. There is one point I wanted to bring up with Minnesota, kind of just like dialogue that fascinated me or intrigued me that I saw happening in Vikings Twitter land, if you want to call it that. Vikings X land now, as the app is no longer named Twitter. I saw Vikings fans the last couple days talking about Sam Darnold and more specifically what Minnesota should do if Darnold just balls out the whole season. If the Sam Darnold we have seen through the first 3 weeks against the New York Giants, the 49ers, and the Texans is the Sam Darnold we get for most of the rest of the season, then what does Minnesota do? And the reason that question is so relevant is because they did just draft a quarterback in the first round this past April, J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan. And it is so relevant because Sam Darnold is only on a one-year deal for $10 million and is set to be a free agent next season. And so I think it is a fascinating conversation. Is it a bit premature just 3 weeks in? Probably. Do I think Sam Darnold stays at this pace for an entire 17-game season? No, I don't. I'll go with the larger sample size of his career. Now, I think I've said this in a couple of videos now, he's in his best situation, his best setup, with competent coaching, incredible playmakers around him. A lot of quarterbacks would step in and have success with what Minnesota has set up around them. But I don't think Sam Darnold, right now, Sam Darnold could be headlining the MVP race. Again, just 3 weeks in, but I'm saying if we slice the pie right there, Sam Darnold could be headlining the MVP race. Do I expect that to be the case when December turns to January on the calendar? No. That's my larger point. But the question of what you do with Darnold, I don't think he sustains this for a 17-game season, but if he does, then what if you're Minnesota? I don't think it's as tricky as it sounds. When you're a front office and you invest a first-round pick on a quarterback, you don't have a choice. You're going to play that quarterback. You're going to hand the keys to the car over at some point to see what you got. And you're going to bite the bullet. And if Darnold were to sign somewhere else after, and again, these are long-term conversations down the road, you can kick the can, but I just saw it popping up on Vikings Twitter, and I was like, oh, that is kind of fascinating because the Vikings have a first-round pick that they use on a quarterback. Of course, McCarthy's out for the year due to injury, and Darnold is only on a one-year deal. But I don't think it's a tough choice. Unless Darnold emerges as like the next coming all of a sudden and is in the MVP race firmly, then I think those conversations would get a little more dicey. But outside of that, you're a front office that used a first-round pick on a quarterback for a reason. You're going to give that quarterback a shot at some point. Would Darnold, if he has a huge year, be receptive to another 1-year deal if he plays his ass off this season? Probably not. But then the flip side of that coin is what team is in a spot where they're going to fork over money to a guy who is entering then his 8th year and has had one really good season and 7 seasons or 6 seasons. That's kind of where it's, you're playing tug of war at that point. And another question that has to be brought up, how much of this is Kevin O'Connell just being a, pretty damn good coach? Kevin O'Connell made Josh Dobbs look like a very competent quarterback for a couple of weeks. Now, I'm not saying Josh Dobbs is awful, but Josh Dobbs was at his best, in my opinion, when he was wearing purple for the Minnesota Vikings for that very short stint last year. And obviously the train came off the tracks at some point there. But we've seen this already before with Kevin O'Connell in his brief stay with Minnesota when it pertains to the quarterback position. And names that have underwhelmed elsewhere that have come in and I think overachieved. And Sam Darnold is the embodiment of that right now for the Vikings. So I think it's just fascinating to think about because Sam Darnold, I know Packer fans don't want to hear it. Sam Darnold's been pretty damn good through 3 weeks. Hope that changes Sunday. Jeff Hafley's defense gets after it. Blitz him. Blitz them, bring pressure. No one's blitzing the Vikings for 3 weeks. I don't know why. If you want more on that and the numbers, again, look at the video yesterday, Packers-Vikings final thoughts. For the Packers, you enter Sunday, you're 2-1, Minnesota's 3-0. I don't look at Minnesota and their record. I look at Green Bay, and I really laser focus in on what's going on with them because it is so early in the season. You could start worrying about jockeying for standings and positioning in the division as the months carry along. Now, this game is huge on Sunday, and it matters big time, and it could tell the tale of the tape once December turns to January. But right now, you're more focused on yourselves if you're the Green Bay Packers, and sitting at 2-1 with back-to-back wins with QB2, Malik Willis in for QB1, who was injured in Jordan Love. Pretty damn good if you're Green Bay. You got to be feeling good if you're the Packers. The juju has to be sky high after winning 2 games with your backup quarterback. Now, some people might point and say, well, it was against Indianapolis and Tennessee. I don't give a rip. It is hard to win in the NFL in general. It is even harder to win with your backup quarterback when your starter's out. That's a fact. Green Bay went 2-0 with Malik Willis. Pretty damn good. So I think that the vibes just got to be really, really high for the Packers heading into this one. And if they want to draw from some personal experience to kind of really get that sour taste in their mouth to give them that extra push if they need it on Sunday, and I don't know that they do, how many of you remember the game last year at Lambeau Field against the Minnesota Vikings? Many will remember it as the game that Kirk Cousins ruptured his Achilles and was out for the season. That's how Vikings fans will likely remember that game. Packer fans will look at it through a different prism. Packer fans remember that game as a 24-10 loss against Minnesota. It dropped the Packers to 2-5 on the season. I was at that game. I remember leaving the stadium, and the conversation amongst Packer fans was largely centered around the offense having no identity, the team as a whole looking completely lost, the defense looking less than enthusiastic, lethargic at times, and again, the word identity. There being none of that with that Packers team last year when they lost at home to Minnesota, 24-10 to move down to 2-5 on the season. You felt like going into that game in October, it was a pivotal point in the Green Bay season. You can either get to 3-4 and creep back towards 500 and inject some life and some belief into yourselves and into the fan base, or you can lose to your NFC North rival and further sink into oblivion at 2-5. And they lost and went to 2-5, and then, of course, rallied, I don't want to say miraculously, but had an incredible second half of the season. Jordan Love comes alive. The offense comes alive. We all know the story. But it wasn't pretty last year against Minnesota at Lambeau Field. It was a lot prettier on New Year's Eve in Minnesota when the Packers beat the hell out of Minnesota and eliminated them from the playoffs. But we're talking about the game at Lambeau. And what a 180 that this team has done about a year later. And now you potentially get Jordan Love back on Sunday. Sign me up. That's what Packer fans are saying. Sign me up. All right. Mitch, I am on YouTube, NFC North Outlook for Week 4. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We got Detroit and Chicago to talk about. I just like starting with the Bears. I was trying to decide in my mind there, like, where do we want to start? Chicago. I kind of feel bad for laughing, but there's a certain pocket of Bears fans who just seem to bring it on themselves every single year, no matter what. They just seem to always bring it on themselves. I will say, so far, small sample size, 3 games, but I have been wrong about Caleb Williams so far. He's looked less than stellar. I didn't expect him to have to be Superman as a rookie. And if you combed through social media in the offseason, I was told all offseason, no rookie quarterback has a better setup than Caleb Williams. You know what? No rookie quarterback in history has had a better setup around them than Caleb Williams. Shane Waldron coming in as the offensive coordinator. We've got DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet. We signed DeAndre Swift. Forgot to mention the offensive line. Offensive line's been terrible. But I was told over and over and over again, it was hammered over my head how Caleb Williams was entering a perfect situation in Chicago. And it not only has been far from perfect, it's been the polar opposite of that through 3 weeks. When I was told and bashed over the head by those lines repeatedly in the offseason by Bears fans, I expected Caleb Williams to step in and not have to do as much as he had to at times at USC to make up for what was an atrocious Trojans defense throughout his time with Southern California. Now, the defense for Chicago is phenomenal. And they're all pointing at the offense saying, what the hell are you guys doing? Figure it out. And I was told he had all these weapons that, Caleb didn't have to be Superman. He didn't have to put the cape on. Chicago had plenty on offense to carry him along, to sort of wean him along as he got his feet wet and dipped his toes into the waters of the National Football League as a rookie quarterback. Hasn't been anything close to that. And it has to be pointed out. Expecting your rookie quarterback to play the role of Superman and almost needing him to for team success typically isn't a great recipe. C.J. Stroud last year, recent example, was a great rookie quarterback. He also had a really good defense, a lot of options on offense. It's not taking away anything from the season C.J. Stroud had. He was tremendous. But he did not have to be Superman for Houston. Caleb Williams is in a spot right now where a lot looks wrong with that offense. DJ Moore looks frustrated. Keenan Allen's missed 2 games. Rome Odunze is also a rookie, just getting accustomed to life in the NFL as a first-round pick. Offensive line, terrible. DeAndre Swift, this prized acquisition at running back that they plucked up from the free agent market. Hasn't done crap for them in the ground game. How much of that is Swift? How much of that is the offensive line? I don't know. I saw some videos this week, and it's easy to nitpick, but a lot of people on the All-22 were looking at apparent holes in the ground game that DeAndre Swift was just missing with his vision. I think you can find those for any running back, any team, week in and week out, certain junctures of a game. Now we're entering the quarter mark of the season. Chicago is 31st in rushing at 72.7 rushing yards per game and 29th in sacks allowed at 4.3 per pop. Not exactly pleasing numbers for Bears fans to inhale. Not exactly what we were led to believe with all the hype surrounding this offense and how it was going to look and the results we've seen so far. Again, small sample size, just 3 games. 31st in rushing, 29th in sacks allowed. Caleb Williams has to be better. I'm not giving him, a pass for all of this. He at times has looked like he can live how he lived on the field as a college quarterback in the pros, and it doesn't work that way. Having his back away from the play at times as he tries to scramble and maneuver about doesn't work in the NFL typically. And he has to be better. And if we're comparing rookies, and specifically rookie quarterbacks, Caleb Williams has looked JV to what I've seen and what you've seen from Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders rookie quarterback. Williams has looked JV compared to Jaden Daniels. I watched that Washington-Cincinnati game Monday night. I was amazed at what I was seeing from Jaden Daniels. The deep balls to Terry McLaurin, the underneath routes, the ability to use his legs, but know when to use his legs. And there were times where that Washington offensive line wasn't great. And he stood in the pocket. He took some hits, chin high, couple of them, and delivered frozen ropes down the field. Jaden Daniels was 21 for 23 against Cincinnati on Monday night. 254 yards, 3 total touchdowns. Helped Washington hang up 38 on Cincinnati. And keep in mind, that was a desperate Cincinnati team. That's a Bengals team that I don't think is a bad team, but they're 0-3. The record is what it is. That was a desperate Cincinnati team playing at home, knowing we need a win. 0-3 crawling out of that hole in a 17-game season in the National Football League is not easy. And Washington hung up 38 points. Washington led at halftime. I want to say it was like 21-13. And even at halftime, I did not bet the game, but I kept thinking, Cincinnati's going to figure it out, right? They're going to win this game. The Bengals will figure it out. The defense will step up. They'll make the adjustments at halftime. And Austin Eckler returns a kick, I think, past midfield to start the second half. Daniels goes right back out there with the offense, and they keep putting up points. They weren't stopped all night. Jaden Daniels, I know it's not much to look at as far as, I'm going to use the phrase again, sample size, but he has been tremendous. Caleb Williams, not so much. And it was against a hungry, desperate Cincinnati team. And you know what Bears fans were thinking about watching that game because it was a primetime standalone on Monday night. Well, it wasn't a standalone. There were 2 Monday night games, Jacksonville and Buffalo being the other. But it was a primetime nationally televised Monday night football game. Bears fans watching that, I'm not even being funny, had to be thinking like, is this happening again? Did we choose the wrong guy again? Is this are we just cursed? Is this a Bears thing and not a we're picking the wrong quarterback thing? But then Trubisky went elsewhere, and he wasn't good in Pittsburgh, and Buffalo was a pit stop. Fields has looked good, though, for Pittsburgh. They're 3-0. Like, Bears fans have to be going through it, not only because of the start for their offense and how slow it's been, but then watching Jaden Daniels on Monday night and seeing how much more advanced he and that offense looked for Washington compared to what they are or aren't cooking up in Chicago for their offense. And I keep going back to it. For all that talk about the Bears fleecing the Panthers in that trade that landed Carolina Bryce Young, and let's say Caleb Williams doesn't pan out, it was still a fleecing. They got DJ Moore. They got picks galore out of that from Carolina, and all Carolina got to do was move up, take Bryce Young. That's been a disaster. But if you don't hit on the quarterback either, a lot of it goes for naught. You still get the star receiver in DJ Moore. I think one of them was used on Torrey Taylor, the punter, who's been phenomenal. I know you can scoff at that because it's a punter, and there are plenty of other picks littered in there as well where the Bears did hit. The cornerback's name is escaping my mind. I think that was one of those picks. But if you don't hit on the quarterback yourself, it's hard to puff that chest out as much as you want to if you're Chicago. And I'm not saying they didn't hit on Caleb Williams, but early results would say there's a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. This week, they're at home against the Rams. They're getting the Rams at a great time. There's no Cooper Kupp. There's no Puka Nacua. I'm not worried about the Chicago defense. It's all about the offense. Good news for the Bears. The Rams are 28th in sacks per game at 1.3 per pop, 28th in blitz percentage at 16.3%, and tied for 17th in quarterback pressures. Aaron Donald's gone. He's retired. The bad man for a lot of teams is gone. Aaron Donald, first ballot Hall of Famer. I'll walk into Canton. Rams defense has been a little shaky, a little iffy. They don't have that guy you can point out. There's no Aaron Donald, right? Jalen Ramsey's gone. He's been gone for a couple of years. Rams defense is still trying to solve the equation early on. And if you're the Bears, early results for their offense, I said not good. Early results for Rams defense. They don't blitz a lot. They struggle to get pressure on the quarterback. This has to be a capitalizing point for Chicago to kind of put a stamp on things, try to get to 2-2, but get to 2-2 with an offense that looks competent. That looks like they can solve the riddle. And at some point, even with a bad O-line and no running game, Caleb Williams is going to have to make plays. And I mentioned last week, if the Bears want to make a dent in this thing, it has to be on the front end of the schedule because the back end of the schedule is brutal. And the Bears will not play another true road game for a month. Their next true road game is October 27th against Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders. They got to capitalize now. 3 games, 2 at home, 1 at a neutral site, and then a bye week. They don't play on the road for a month. But tough sledding early on for the Bears. All right, Mitch, I am on YouTube. Finish up talking Detroit Lions, NFC North, Week 4 outlook. It was a nice bounce-back win for the Lions against a frisky Arizona team that was putting up points galore on the Rams and on Buffalo in the first 2 weeks of the season, and then were brought back down to earth. Watch that game. Kyler Murray, it just seemed like was trying to force it to Marvin Harrison Jr. too much. I think he finished with 11 or 12 targets, and the Lions kind of knew they kind of like shifted their focus as the game continued to unravel. Kyler Murray just kept trying to go back to that well even when it wasn't there. Now, Marvin Harrison Jr. has all the makings of a receiver that's going to be tremendous in the NFL for a very, very long time, but when the opposing defense sees that you're trying to force feed him too much, they're going to shift coverages, they're going to shift their focus, and that's what they did. And there was one interception in the end zone where Kyler Murray in double coverage just kind of threw it up to Marvin Harrison Jr. was like, go try to make a play, and it was picked off, an easy pick for Detroit. So Detroit kind of brought that Arizona offense back to life. Now Detroit gets Seattle on Monday night, and the Seahawks are a quiet, sneaky 3-0 so far this season. Very quiet, very sneaky 3-0 for Seattle. A couple reasons for that potentially. Could be opponent-based. They've played the Broncos, who before I don't like saying upset. there's upsets in the NFL. But before a surprising win in Tampa Bay last week, the Broncos didn't look great at all. They beat the Patriots, and then Seattle beat the Dolphins without Tua and with Skylar Thompson in at quarterback. Last year, these two teams butted heads. I think someone said they've played 4 times in the last 3 years. Geno Smith torched Detroit last season in Detroit. 328 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an overtime win. I think this will be a nice litmus test for both teams. You know, how good is Seattle? You beat Bo Nix, Jacoby Brissett, and Skylar Thompson. I mean, you're 3-0. It's awesome. Did many people think the Seahawks would be 3-0? Probably not, but they are. Here they are. But how does it stack up? You know, when you beat Bo Nix in his first ever NFL start, Jacoby Brissett, who's playing behind an awful offensive line in New England, and Jacoby Brissett's just like a journeyman veteran at this point himself, and then you beat the Dolphins with Skylar Thompson, who's filling in for Tua. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to win in the NFL. I say it over and over, but, you know, context does matter. It does. Because I'm looking at some of these numbers for the game, too, and I'm like, Seattle's allowing the second fewest yards per game at 248. That's incredible. But we can't go without mentioning that it came against Bo Nix in his rookie debut, Jacoby Brissett, and the bad offensive line New England's displayed, and then the Dolphins without their quarterback, their starting quarterback. But I want to give them credit because I'm like, it's a defense in Seattle that's allowed 1 touchdown pass through 3 weeks. And I try to tell myself, like, man, I don't care who you're playing in the NFL. If you go a 3-week stretch and your defense allows 1 total touchdown pass, that's pretty damn impressive. And so I'm kind of like juggling back and forth on what to make of the Seahawks. That's why I think we know Detroit's good. We know Detroit is going to stay good, you know, as long as they don't have like some devastating injuries throughout the year. Detroit's going to be very good. They're going to be right in the focal point, right in the picture of the NFC as things wind down. And I would be very surprised if that wasn't the case near the end of the year, if Detroit wasn't right there in the thick of things in the NFC. So this is, to me, the first big test for Seattle. How do you stack up? You know, this isn't Bo Nix as a rookie, still trying to figure things out. This isn't Jacoby Brissett. This isn't Skylar Thompson. It's Jared Goff. It's Jamison Williams. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's David Montgomery. It's Jahmyr Gibbs. It's Sam Laporta. I mean, it's Ben Johnson as the offensive coordinator, who's been a maestro for Detroit in the OC role for the last few years. This is a really good test for Seattle, and we kind of want to see where they're at as much as we want to see how Detroit stacks up against them. I mentioned Seattle allowing the second fewest yards. Do you take it with a grain of salt? I look at the flip side. Seattle has had problems protecting Geno Smith. Over 3 sacks per game. Aiden Hutchinson has the most sacks in the NFL, 6.5 through 3 games, and the most quarterback hits with 11, so that's another thing to watch in this one. I do think this is a spot where I think Detroit's going to rain down some perspective on Seattle. I'm not saying they're going to win by 21 points or going away, but I do. I think Detroit wins this game by 2 possessions. Seattle gets, I'm not saying Seattle's bad, but coming off a 9-8 season where they kind of underwhelmed down the stretch, now they're 3-0, and everyone's like, whoa, Seattle's 2 games up in the NFC West, right? Because Arizona, San Francisco, and the Rams, I believe, are all 1-2. And Seattle's 3-0, 2 games up in September. Whoa, look at the Seahawks. They're awesome. I think this will be a bit of a reality check for Seattle. Monday Night Football in Detroit. You know, that crowd's always causing a ruckus anyways. They're going to be louder in the primetime on the... I don't think it's a standalone game. I think there's 2 Monday night games this week. But in a primetime national spotlight, I think Detroit gets it done. And I think they get it done by a couple of possessions and kind of stick that reality check on the Seahawks a little bit. So... yeah, Monday Night Football, Detroit, Seattle. The Bears have the Rams, and then Packers, Vikings. That is your NFC North outlook for Week 4. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I should mention, instant reaction will come Monday instead of Sunday right after the game. I'll be at the game, Packers, Vikings, so the instant reaction video will have to come on Monday instead of right after the game on Sunday. Enjoy the slate this weekend. Some big ones. Perhaps none bigger than Packers-Vikings at Lambeau Field. We'll see you next time.